I will. Hopefully Fred's running. But most of you have heard this before, but I'm going to kind of read through my opening statement here for those of you that haven't. And it's only a couple minutes, but hopefully that'll leave some more times for questions if you have them. Sarah, did you need something? You were waving.
I think she had to leave.
Here to go. Okay, no problem.
It's still Hanukkah, so she wasn't sure she'd even be able to join us. So I'm glad she came. Yeah.
True. Okay, so my name is Gary Bucholtz, and while Fred garnered nearly 70% of the vote in his last run, I have a firm belief that I have the right balance and background, as well as beliefs and ideas to bridge the rural and urban divide that makes up the district and unseat him. And that's really the core of what we're talking about here. The urban-rural divide is what's going to make the difference in this election in this district. I've worked with a lot of people on all different backgrounds and ideologies. Having spent nearly 22 years in the U.S. military, I'm a disabled combat veteran, a former law enforcement officer, former small business owner. I'm a husband and a father of 2 children, and I've been on food stamps and I've been in the 3%. I'm a gun owner. I'm an advocate of responsible gun ownership and an advocate for Medicare for all. I believe in a strong social safety net. Having lived in Europe for nearly 9 years of my military career, I've experienced the benefits of socialized medicine, and I understand the difference it can make to an entire population when the population doesn't have to worry about healthcare costs bankrupting them. I've had the best private healthcare available, and I've also been on the Oregon Health Plan. I believe that we can bring back our logging industry in a sustainable, economically advantageous way. I also believe that we can and should protect our natural resources. I believe we can have both a natural resources industry as well as clean water and sustainable salmon fisheries. We can do all these things if we can find middle ground that we all agree upon. District 9 is not going to elect a far left progressive. Running far left will not prevent us from being represented by someone even further to the right than Gerard. I feel I have the right experience and background to meet people on both sides of the aisle that can understand the impacts to the decisions that are made in Salem on people's ways of life, and be able to have conversations to bring people to the table to vote. And a couple notes on what Spencer had said, and I was doing a little research while he was talking. We spend on average about $105,000 per year per inmate for 14,200 inmates. We spend $6,800 per year on our students. That is a fundamental problem and why we have an increasing and growing prison population. There's also almost a 40% chance that somebody that commits a felony is going to go back to prison for committing another felony. The rates of re-entering prison are staggering. And we have that combined with what our graduation rates are. And there's a conversation to be had on where we're putting our finances and how we can change the balance of where the state's money is going. And just off of his conversation, I think there's a lot of solutions that can be had at a state level that will make people like him and his job easier.
Anybody have any questions for Gary? Gary, do you know, like you have your committee, but you're not on Orstar yet. Do you know when you will be? So we can.
I am. It's pending. That's what I'm waiting for.
Okay. And you don't know how long that takes?
I don't.
Okay. Well, I'll keep checking.
Yeah, I will too. Believe me, I will let you know as soon as it's done.
I keep looking to see who's running for different offices. So yeah.
Yeah, the only way to see now is, committees can be formed, but there's no way to file until the maps are certified.
Okay. Charles?
Gary, I'd like to know if you're elected, what committees you would want to sit on.
Several. Definitely Veterans Affairs Committee. Based on my background, I think I'm pretty knowledgeable in that area. I've dealt with the Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs in multiple ways, and they provide a lot of services. So I think having had my experience with them, that would make sense. Also, the Health and Human Services, having healthcare available to everyone is a huge priority for me. and the ways of getting that achieved and paying for it are going to be a challenge no matter what. But I know with the efforts that are already in place going on that road, there are people willing to do this and make the tough decisions to put that in place. And that's one of the things that impacts this district, especially when you get outside of the major cities and you get into the rural areas. There are huge healthcare problems and lack of access to healthcare in rural areas that, they get choppered into different hospitals out of the county because they don't have access to healthcare. And when you have to, take ambulances for far distances or aircraft or anything else, not only does that limit your access to healthcare, but it incredibly increases the cost. So a minor car accident injury that has to transport you somewhere now becomes a bankruptcy, situation for people, which is insane. So for this district, especially with the amount of rural population that we have, that is an absolute priority of mine to try to solve. So those two would be probably my priority. Being newest, I don't know what my level of selection would be. But the other one, especially for the other same reasons that I just mentioned, would be transportation. Our availability of public transportation is dismal here. You can go to Portland and take Max, and there's buses all over the place. But here, if you want to get somewhere, you're driving or you're getting a ride, which impacts everything from pollution to traffic to everything else. And you have the lower end of the economic spectrum that really can't go anywhere. And where their jobs are, that's not where people live. So you just have all these cascading problems that can, if you start solving one or two of these, you start solving other ones as well. So those would probably be my three top choices.
Anybody else have Lee?
Yeah, Gary, well, we appreciate that you're supportive of universal health care and excited about you running. Recently, about a year ago, I went into Orstar, where you look at all the funding of all the legislators, and I did a spreadsheet on all of the members of the health committees in the Senate and the House, as well as leadership in the Senate and the House. And I was surprised, even with the most progressive of our supporters on issues like universal health care, how much money they get from big healthcare firms, from insurance entities, from the hospitals, from all kinds of health-related organizations, and from pharma, a big chunk of change from pharma. And I began to worry about even our friends in terms of what they really can do. I work with a coalition, besides Healthcare for All Oregon, I work with a coalition, Oregonians for Affordable Prescription Prices, OCAP. And each year they run a couple of Mickey Mouse little bills to try to begin to trim what pharma is doing. And often they don't pass. And when they do, we get sued. And but I can't even believe that they can pass. I mean, that they can pass even those little bills when I look at all the money they're getting. What will be your thought be about who you're going to take money from? How are you going to get the money you need to get elected? And I understand the conundrum, but also what we need to do to either go to public funding or do some better controls on how money is flowing into the legislature. Ideas on any of that?
I'm all for public funding of campaigns. I think that would solve nationwide, that would solve a significant amount of our problems. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. That doesn't mean it can't happen in Oregon. Oregon's done some pretty interesting things, and led the country in certain spaces. So it certainly is a place that it can be done. But in terms of taking money from pharmaceutical companies, I think that would depend on a lot of things. I would love to say there's no way I would take money from these people, but we have to win. And winning costs money. There's no way around that. And I think where it comes in is that, they donate tons of money, and what they get for that money is, like you said, these piecemeal pieces of legislation to keep people, give them a little bit of what they want so they'll keep voting for these people, but that's not solving any problems. If there's an alternative source of revenue, campaign financing for that, then I'm all for it. But I think if you can be very clear, and I would hope that the people that are supporting healthcare for all for Oregon would be able to come out and say what we really want, and what we're asking for. And if the pharmaceutical companies want to donate, knowing that this is what I'm going to push for, I really shouldn't stop them. That wouldn't make sense. But if I go out and say, you know what, Oregon can solve prescription drug prices, because we can. It's been done before. There's no reason why state agencies shouldn't be negotiating heavily, and why we can't limit how long what's the word for generics should be available for. We can pass those laws and make them work. There's great examples in Canada of how they've solved this problem, and there's no reason why the state of Oregon can't do the same. There's also ways that the state can leverage its financial purchasing power to also solve this for citizens. So there's a lot of ways that can be done. Would I openly tell this to pharmaceutical donors? Absolutely. And if you want to give me money after telling you that I'm going to try to do my best to cut your profits to help our people, that's what I'll do. But if you want to still send a check after that, so be it. I'm not going to stop you. But that's not going to whittle down what I want to do, and that is big picture healthcare overhaul. Because that is the only thing that's going to solve it. We can go for the next 50 years taking away little tiny pieces, but it's not going to solve the problem at all, ever. It's just going to slow it down. So I don't know if that answers your question, but there are limited sources of income for campaigns, and that is a big one. But I think if you're open and honest what you're going to do, and you do it, or at least do your best to try to do it, and not settle for small piecemeal breadcrumbs to get this done, I think you should be okay. I wouldn't say that I would flat out turn them down, but I will make it very clear to what I'm going to try to do to them.
Good answer. Thanks.
Jason?
So Gary, I'm curious as to what other progressive / democratic organizations you're reaching out to outside of Silverton Progressives, because I know you don't officially have a district yet, but I know the general shape of your district and who those people are, and so I'm just wondering, who are you talking with right now?
So I'm just getting started. So some ideas that have been presented to me and that I am supportive of: the Workers' Party of Oregon. That makes sense to me. What their platform is and what they stand for makes a lot of sense to me. And I went through what I could find from that organization, that party, and I didn't see anything that I disagreed with, and most likely heavily support most of the things that they propose. So that would be one of them. And they're an alternative party, but they do cross-party work, so that would definitely be a big one. But I don't have an exhaustive list of that yet, obviously, because this is not just Silverton. This I need to understand and learn what the landscape is in the southern part of Clackamas County, the northern part of Lynn County, and the other areas. But I think the bigger question isn't necessarily in the progressive realm that I need to get in contact with. It's the middle of the road Republican groups and the middle of the road Democratic groups that really are what will put this over the edge. And those are the groups I need to try to make contact with, and those are going to be the hardest doors to open.
Well, and I just wanted to throw some names out there. I'm sure that you have advisors that are telling you this sort of thing, but it seems to me that this early in the game, you should be talking to the Woodburn Dems, and that you should be talking to Friends of French Prairie, and you should be trying to make some inroads with the Oregon Marion County Farm Bureau.
Absolutely,
it's a conservative organization that I actually got the endorsement from.
For sure, that's awesome.
And so I just to mention some people that I hope you start reaching out to soon, because
I will. If you can send me contact information, I will reach out to them as soon as possible.
I can probably.
That would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. And I would be curious if I can cut you offline somehow and figure out how you got their endorsement. I would love to hear how that worked out and what it was that got them to back you.
Great. Okay.
Gary, I can connect you with Friends of French Prairie, and also we have a list of unions, and it's probably time to contact them, even though
Yep.
you can't, to get their endorsement, and I will send you the list. We had a candidate support group that was working on the contact, who to contact in each union, but our chair resigned because she's running for mayor in Salem, and we haven't had a meeting for several months now, but I still have the list, so I will give you that list.
That would be great. And if there's any contacts in the other population centers in Sweet Home and those other areas, I think that those areas in Hubbard that have large Hispanic populations, I think would be really beneficial. I mean, we're talking, I think it was 12,000 votes we need to sort out here. So we'll have to find those wherever they're at. And those are bigger population areas as well.
We had, I think Paige Hook ran for office. Was it in Sweet Home, Lee?
Yeah, well, she ran for the House district down there. She was on the city council in, I want to say Sublimity, but yeah.
So I'll have to try and get you two together. She'd be a good person to talk to on what groups to talk to there.
Thank you.
So. Are you raising your hand, Mike?
Yes, my tiny little hand. So this is an odd question, but I want to go back to the question about who we receive money from and just drill down a little bit. And I don't know what the appropriate way to answer this is, but often campaign money comes in over the transom. It comes in as a check or a transfer. There's not necessarily on the front end a conversation about it. So what I want to know is if you received a check from somebody, and I'm not saying it's just has to do with healthcare or big pharma, could be farming, could be forestry development. Are you going to originate a conversation with that organization so that they know who you are before you cash a check? Because a lot of times that isn't a conversation that gets had. There's an assumption going on here. And that is that you're going to take my money and I'll worry about what I get for that money down the road. A, if you win, and B, if you have any power over the things that I want you to. So I don't know what's appropriate here, but would you originate a conversation before you cash a check?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's part of the problem is that there are you have expectations or a expectation of returning something without it being known as a poor way to have a contract that you're not aware of what's written in it. So absolutely, I would do that. I think the financial accountability and also here's the other thing, and this being that this is my first time going through this, my hope would be to figure out a way to be as transparent as possible with the people that are going to vote for me, exactly where my fundraising is coming from. I don't think we see that very often. And that may, through transparency, be able to shape who would be willing to send a check like that if they knew it was not going to be a secret. And I would have to understand what that would impact on actual fundraising, but to answer your first question, absolutely yes, I would initiate that conversation before I cash a check. But I think there's some possibilities for being really on the extreme side of transparency on how a campaign is fundraised and funded, and let the voters really know who's paying for you to win.
Okay.
I'm guessing that your website will let them know what you're for too, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Tobias should be joining us any minute, and just so you know, we have several people running for governor at this point, and we're hoping to have more visit us. Tonight is Tobias, and we're still working on getting the other candidates to join us at another meeting, so. But we can keep asking Gary questions until Tobias pops in. He's supposed to be in just at 8 o'clock. Any other questions? Well, Gary, I think it's probably, we should talk to Megan Kavanaugh again, the one that you spoke to early on, just to touch base with her again too.
Yes, absolutely.
And just a reminder, the Republicans had the group called We Are Pooh that tried to get rid of Fred Gerard early on. So they're not happy with him either.
He's in a strange dynamic right now, but there's a hardcore group to his right that don't want him, but the core base, they get basically what they want from him. But I think the argument to be able to make there is that having a Republican representative for them really does not give them a lot of power in the Senate to even get some of their initiatives or wants through the legislative process. Whereas I think if you can find the middle road and take some of those initiatives from him, and convey to them that they will actually have a representative that has some authority to actually implement legislation, being in the majority party for once, depending on the level of conversation you can have with these people to convince them, might win some of them over. Some of at least the moderate ones may understand that they're better off having some wins than none. And I think that's an argument we can make with them. So hopefully it is Fred.
And I think Tobias is getting ready to join us.
Gary, I'm very pleased you're running. I think you have the right attitude and the right position to take on this district. And so I'm enthused that you're running and hope that you do a good job.
Thanks, Charles. Appreciate that a lot.
And Jessica,
Hi.
hi. So is Tobias joining us?
Yes, he is going to be on in just a few minutes. His kids' basketball practice ran a little bit over, so he is on his way.
Okay. Okay, so any other questions for Gary while we're waiting for Tobias? Okay, hi, Sarah, I'm glad you joined us.